At this point today, we've taken 36 businesses to more than $1 million a month. Some of those businesses far exceeding $1 million a month. I made the big change. I came into my marketing agency and just caught it on fire, burned it down, fired 23 of those 27 staff, kept 4. I was convinced that I could get paid at least $100,000 a month in almost every deal that I did. I realized, first of all, clients didn't care at all about my time and effort. They solely cared about... Welcome to the video. My name's Jeremy. I'm gonna help you get to $1 million a month. In this case, as an agency owner. Back in the day, I had a very simple idea, and it was, to me, very realistic and very doable, which is one huge barrier that I noticed right away in almost every agency owner that I ever talked to. I was convinced that I could get paid at least $100,000 a month in almost every deal that I did. And I was convinced I didn't need to go above and beyond in terms of the services that I would offer, or the time and effort being greater, or having to scale up my staff to a tremendous amount to do it. I was convinced that I could get $100,000 a month off of rev share relationship. And it's very important to understand why. At that point in my agency career, when I had this idea, I had already taken at least 5 to maybe 8 people, I don't remember the exact number, somewhere between 5 and 8 people to over $1 million a month already. And I thought to myself, I'm like, dude, if I get 10% of that, that'd be fair, realistic. And because we've already done it this many times, and I wasn't even that far into my agency career, it felt like I could, as time passed, make even more than just $100,000 off of every deal. And the conditioning that I had up to that point in my life in terms of my financial mindset, I just viewed this as one of the most realistic and achievable outcomes for myself as an agency owner. And I viewed how I was going about my marketing agency as just flat out wrong. You know, at that point, I had 27 staff, I had 3 offices, 2 in Beverly Hills, 1 in Miami, and I was taking on anybody and everybody in terms of clientele. We had a particular niche that we had more clients in than other niches, but overall, we'd take on anybody. We sold all kinds of services: social media management, advertising, building funnels, marketing automation, chat bots had just come out at the time. We were doing that. We would do course creation. We would do like full-blown web development, not just funnels. We would do tons of services. Well beyond that too, press releases, graphic design, video editing services, just so much stuff as a marketing agency. And you know, yeah, we were doing a couple $100,000 a month. I think we were netting around that time a high 100,000 or maybe as low as 220,000. It was, you know, all right. And at the time, you know, I really thought to myself, I'm like, I'm doing this way because I wanted to eventually exit from the business. That's what I always heard. That's what I thought was the smart thing to do. And then once again, I just looked at this set of outlier clients that we had, and I thought to myself, I'm like, I could make literally double or triple what I'm making right now off of just these clients if I had a rev share. Why wouldn't I do that? You know, and I really thought to myself, like, what are we doing on these particular deals? And it wasn't a lot. Believe it or not, it wasn't a lot. It was mainly just advertising. We would set up a funnel or 2 here and there. We would do marketing automation to support those funnels we created. But for the most part, it was very simple. The idea was I could sell essentially advertising services with some auxiliary services attached to it. Like I said, like funnel building, marketing automation, some general consulting on what to do in the business. And I really thought to myself, like, I could get paid $100,000 per deal easily. Why wouldn't I do that? And as that seed just started to take root, eventually, you know, I started to become more stressed and just generally unhappy in the way that I was doing the model. So I made the big change. I came into my marketing agency and just caught it on fire, burned it down, fired 23 of those 27 staff, kept 4. Today I have anywhere between 7 and 8, give or take the time of year. I got rid of all 3 of the offices. I put everybody into a remote position. I came back full-time to Miami. And to be clear, I played this very simple game. And I'll lay it out for you so you can see what I did. The math was, I wanted to make $1 million a month. And I didn't really want to work with more than 10 people. So 10 clients was my ideal situation. To be fair, today, I'm willing to work with 15. I've become more efficient between this idea and today, so that's why there's that 5 client difference. However, when I did this math, the next part was also very simple. Okay, $1 million a month, 10 clients, well, what's that mean? $1 million divided by 10 is $100,000 a month per deal. So if I could go out and achieve this, what was I to do differently, okay? I had to define the rules of the game. And one of the first things that I did in terms of doing that was, well, I realized, first of all, clients didn't care at all about my time and effort. They solely cared about results. And because of that, I was gonna approach things differently. As I mentioned, I had a whole bunch of essentially support staff, a whole bunch of contractors in addition to those staff that we had hired solely to do all these random services. Once again, with the logic of they don't care about my time and effort at all. Okay, if I was solely gonna work on results, well, that changes everything. So they don't care about time or effort. They only care about results. Well, once again, this specific mindset was the foundation to this game, okay? So essentially, the services, just to put this in perspective, we'd offer advertising, we would create funnels, not like an ongoing amount. It's not like I'm sitting here trying to tell you, oh, we would build like 2 to 4 funnels a month. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. If the client needed a funnel for anything other than paid ads, we would tell them no. Like, we're only doing things related to what we agree has a very high probability to make them $1 million a month. That's all we cared about. So if the client would bring up an idea as an example, something that just didn't have a high probability to do that, we would just tell them no. Like, we wouldn't do anything the client said. We would only do the things that we thought as a marketing agency could benefit this client's probability of making at least $1 million a month. That was the sole objective in every deal from this point forward. That was a part of the rules of the game. Sure, we would take clients' feedback. Yeah, we'd have a client here or there that would really know what they were doing, and for sure we'd listen to those clients. But for the most part, you gotta remember, as a marketing agency, you're being brought in because you know what to do, and they likely don't know what to do, and that's why they need you. It's a symbiotic relationship that exists. So long story short, advertising, funnels, we would do marketing automation. Marketing automation being email marketing, some text message marketing automation, connecting things up via Zapier, stuff like that. In addition to that, I blanket this statement under the word consulting because it's relatively broad, under the logic I just articulated, which is, look, we know what to do. Clients don't necessarily know what to do. They're constantly relying on us to tell them things about what to sell, how to price it, what to do next, who they need to hire to support what's going on in the business. Clients rely on us in a large capacity from that perspective. So we just kind of blanket statement that as consulting. Now, to be clear, this is really the core set of 4 services we would offer. And as I mentioned, in terms of things that we would always do, and this is once again a very key thing to understand out of all of this right here would all boil down to being done in the most efficient way that it could possibly be executed. We would never do anything from the perspective of we are gonna be judged positively if we spend more time on this or more effort than this than what's necessary. The logic of an engineer. How could we put as little in as humanly possible and still get the level of result that we're looking for and beyond? This mindset is critical. Now, to be clear, all these services with the perspective of efficiency kept my staff very lean. And now, to be clear, it's also important to note in terms of rules of the game, our client type changed a little bit. Instead of just being able to close anybody and everybody that wanted to work with us, regardless of how much money they wanted to hand us, we would say no if we could not get that client to $1 million a month because we wanted to take 10% of that. 10% paying us $100,000 a month so we could get 10 of those clients to pay us $1 million a month. So long story short, if they didn't have a high probability to hit that $1 million a month, we would say no. So there's a very specific client type. I talk about this inside of all my programs, all my courses in detail. I call my perfect client traits. There's 23 individual characteristics that we decided to break down that made all the difference for us when we look at any deal. It doesn't matter the niche. This is also a very important thing in terms of rules. It is not niche specific, okay? It is client specific. The client type is what we started to go after. This in particular made a substantial difference to what we were doing in the business because what we found once again is there's great clients in every niche. There's just very specific characteristics of these businesses that we were working with that increased the probability that much more in our favor that they could get to $1 million a month. Most of our deals started to change. One thing that started to happen, which was very, interesting to say the least, was typically the minimum that somebody would be making was around $100,000 to about $300,000 a month. This would be the usual client revenue range that somebody would come to us in. And this is important to understand because when you play a particular game, okay, our game in every deal we do once again is we want to get you to at least $1 million a month. The types of people that you're going to work with also changes as a result of that based on the game you're playing. A lot of agency owners that come to me and that, learn lessons from me, they all typically start in the same place that I was, where they're working with, sometimes it's a defined niche, sometimes it's anybody, but because they don't have a specific game they're playing in terms of the revenue number that they want to get a client to, they'll get people that are all over the place in terms of revenue. They'll get people at like a couple grand a month to occasionally a person that might be doing a couple $100,000 a month. But to be clear, all these people that are in this specific revenue range for us, like that $100,000 to $300,000 a month, these people all desperately want to get to $1 million a month. Like it's their next income goal, and they recognize that. And sure, there's some stepping stone based goals along the way. They don't really care about those. Those aren't what they're after. They're after the $1 million a month. And what's interesting is, to be clear, at this point today, we've taken 36 businesses to more than $1 million a month. Some of those businesses far exceeding $1 million a month. So as an example, we've had 2 businesses in total now that we've worked with that did $5 million a month and $5.5 million a month, with the help of our services, of course. Now, to be clear, these 2 businesses unlocked completely different deals for us, because now when a business is already doing $1 million to $2 million a month, we have a higher probability to take that business to $5 million a month. We've been there, done that, which is what every person who's gonna wanna work with you, especially at that income range, they're going to want to hire somebody who's already been there, done that. They're not going to want to hire somebody that they're essentially gambling on. Is there a probability they could take me to that number? They want to hire somebody like me who's already done it literally dozens and dozens of times. So to be clear, these people were just teed up, easy to close deals that also had very high probabilities if they had the right, once again, perfect client characteristics. So these people would then get filtered through a system. Okay, and that system was pretty simple. We would then audit each one of these individuals for our perfect client traits. We would literally share this document with these people, and we would tell them, you're like, look, this specific set of traits, this is what gets the highest probability. This is what increases our certainty to like literally damn near 100%. Is when you have these specific characteristics as an individual and as a business, our odds are infinitely better in comparison to without these. And I'm talking all of them. 23 out of 23 is what we're looking for. We rarely make exceptions. Okay, there's rare instances where we've made exceptions over the years. And when we do, unfortunately, it typically doesn't play out in our favor. However, there are some instances, to be clear, when we cut the 23 out of 23, maybe they meet like 19 out of 23. But there's a lot of potential, and it's something new to us, and we'll take that risk, and it's still played out successfully, just not all the time. If there's 23 out of 23 and they're in that specific income range, dude, those 2 things, odds are so high that they're getting to $1 million plus a month, and that we're going to be able to hit our goal. Okay, now the next thing is, and this is important to understand, okay? They have to agree to our pricing structure. Not everybody's gonna agree to pay a thick rev share, okay? And it's important to note that even if they do agree that they're at 100 to 300K a month. Like they've never paid somebody $100,000 a month. We've had people that are enthused, like looking forward to it, literally saying things like, I am excited for the opportunity to pay you $100,000 a month. Dude, you make me $1 million bucks, I'm cutting a check every month for you with a big smile on my face. And to be fair, I mean, for the most part, yeah, those people are right, and they are happy about it. There are a percentage of people, okay, that eventually get to that number of the $1 million a month, that go through this process, that start at 100 to 300K, meet all our perfect client traits, agree to the pricing structure, and then it comes down to cutting us those big checks, and like there's just a lot of resistance, there's a lot of hesitancy. They still do it because they're contracted to do it. But my point being, it's like we want people that have the right expectations. Okay, so when they agree to the pricing structure, the next big thing that makes a huge difference to the success of this model that I'm laying out for you is that expectations are met, agreed upon, and set properly. Okay, not every deal that's at 100 to 300K a month, even if they meet the perfect client trait characteristics, even if they have the right expectations and they agree to our pricing, not every deal, unfortunately, is going to get to $1 million a month. I mean, there's some deals that, they go up to a couple $100,000 a month more than where they're at, and their sales team implodes, or their service wasn't as scalable as they thought, or like some key person in their business leaves, or sometimes, and this is kind of crazy too, they don't realize that even making, as an example, like $600,000 or $750,000 a month is a ton of money, and they just start fucking off. Like they'll go travel around and just completely check out of the business. And there is rarely ever an instance that I can point at out of those 36 different deals that we've done that we've gotten to $1 million a month where the person is checked out and continues making the money or continues growing the business. A majority of the time, once again, like there is some number that somebody will hit along the way, and it could be far bigger than $1 million a month, could be a little smaller, as I'm trying to mention here, that they become a completely different person. They start making dumb decisions, or they just check out of the business. All kinds of stuff can happen. But anyway, moral of the story, the expectations are critical. Okay, because when you're saying to clients, okay, our goal when we work with people is to get you to $1 million a month, that's like the sole reason we're going to go into the deal. Well, what do they expect? They expect to make $1 million a month. So you have to really conservatively check those expectations and let them know, like, all right, well, what are the probabilities of this working out? That's where financially modeling comes in. Okay, so to be clear, the last step of this process, and this is like really the final thing for us is we financially model out, okay? Very few agency owners that I know use financial models, and it's rather shocking to me because it's just basic math. We're gonna plug in, as an example, like the client's offer. So let's use an example that the client has a $5,000 offer. And this could be like some kind of service, this could be some kind of product. Ideally, it has high margin, and even more ideal than that is it's scalable, you know? So the first thing that we have to do as an example is if we wanna get them $1 million a month divided by 5,000. Okay, so if we take that $1 million number, and once again, we just divide it by the 5,000, that client needs to make 200 sales per month, okay, to be able to make that possible. Now, this is where we start to reverse engineer, okay? So if the client needs at least 200 sales per month, okay, we'll just take a few steps back and we'll look at their sales process. Some clients that we work with do webinars, some clients that we work with do sales calls, some clients do like DM strategies and they have setters and they're setting people and then pushing them over to calls. Some people are doing like door-to-door sales. You know, it's just a wide range in terms of what type of service people are usually offering, but the most common one that I'll use in this example is typically a call funnel. So for 200 sales to occur, well, there's a few things that happen, okay? And these steps are pretty simple. That's the last step, is the quantity of people that actually close, okay? The step before that would be, well, how many people are actually gonna close? Like, as an example, if we had a 20% close rate, okay? So to be clear, a 20% close rate would mean we need 1,000 calls to happen, okay, within that month. Now, from here, you have to factor in the show rate, okay? So now we get into, well, how many people do we actually have to book? Show rates are different. Like when I first started doing this model, I could get a show rate that's like the floor would be 70%. We had some people doing show rates like 80 to 90%. Today's floor can be as low as like 50 to 60%, as high as like 70 to 80%. If we get 80% show rate nowadays, I mean, holy shit, that deal's going gangbusters. So to be clear, if we need 1,000 calls, let's just use the example, there's a 60% show rate, okay? So let's say that we have 60% of people actually showing up. Well, that means that we need at least, okay? And this is what's important to understand from here, because this is where you start really getting into the nitty-gritty of the situation. We would need at least about 1,667 people, okay, to book. So once again, 1,660 people to book a call, okay? Now this is where things start getting good, is because if we can achieve this, now we need to know, well, how much do we need to spend? So give or take, a lot of the times we're already working in the industry that somebody's in, but as I mentioned, I mean, there's an occasional niche, it's just a great deal, all the characteristics are met, we'll happily take on that individual's business. Let's use the example they get, I don't know, $125 cost per call, okay? So here's where things start getting really fun. This is where we start getting an idea of what their actual spend needs to be. So, and this is where you start to be able to set like much more proper expectations with an individual and see what's really possible here and what you need to scale into. Not everybody is going to be able to just spend the amount of money that you're about to see they need to spend to be able to make $1 million a month, but it's important that they have the means to be able to do so, and that you can then kind of reverse engineer based on where they're at now, what's an appropriate test budget, and then what your scaling plan is going to be to get there. So if we had $150 cost per call, we would need to spend, so it's $150 times the 1,667 calls. That in total comes out to $208,000 and $375, okay? So this is ad spend at this point. Now, it's important to note, this assumes, okay, that they're gonna get at least a 1,667 calls, that a total of 60% of those people are gonna show up, which is gonna result in 1,000 calls. That assumes that 20% of those 1,000 calls close, and that also assumes that on those 1,000 calls where 20% of people close to get the 200 sales, that assumes that $5,000 is actually collected. So not payment plans, you know, nothing else, literally just $5,000. This is very rigid math, okay? So from here, usually what we then do is we attempt to reverse engineer some, you know, variations of this. We try to see like, all right, well, what's the current AOV of the business, the average order value? How much are you actually collecting out of the $5,000 you're charging right now on your current sales call? And they might reveal some crazy shit to you like, oh, we're only cash collecting like $3,800 on average. Well, that changes the math drastically. And ideally, we're working with somebody who already has these types of these stats, okay? These statistics make a huge difference when they're true and accurate. You don't want to project a lot onto the paid advertising when they're only doing organic up to this point, most likely. You have to have some variations in your model to be able to set proper expectations and to be able to see like, okay, you might need to spend a total of like $400,000 if you're only cash collecting $3,800 and they're only closing like 15%. They might need to spend $125,000 if the show rate ends up being like 70% and their close rate ends up being like 24%. My point being, these are the numbers in a call funnel that make a huge difference. Okay, so ideally we can plug in what they're currently doing and see if it's realistic. And then to be clear, when we take that financial model, we kind of go backwards. And believe it or not, we go through the whole process again. So when we have the model, we'll reset expectations again. Okay, we'll get them once again to agree that like, look, okay, if you're spending $208,000 just on ad spend and you have, let's use the example of a 20% commission, okay, 20% commission, 200 sales times 1,000. I mean, do that basic math. Dude, that's gonna be crazy for that individual. They're gonna have to kick out $200K on top of that for the cost of their commission, okay? Assuming once again that they just have 20% going to their closers. So if they have 20% commission, okay, and we factor that in as well, they have 200K going out to that. Okay, and long story short, on top of that, they're, in addition to all of that, gonna have just the expenses of the business to deliver. Okay, and you don't know what those expenses are. I mean, they'll tell you, but at the same time, like, the expenses are usually probable to go up in the instance that they're selling $1 million in comparison to selling like $100,000 to $300,000 a month in revenue. And then in addition to that, okay, on top of all of that, they're gonna have two more things. They're gonna have your cost. So they're gonna have, as an example, once again, if you hit that $1 million, they're gonna have $100,000 to you. And then on top of that, they're gonna have taxes. Okay, and once again, depending on where they live, where they operate, and what they actually net, and then that is going to end up being their true net, and that's to them. So out of $1 million in a month, they might be thinking like, oh yeah, dude, I'm going to be balling out of control. I'm going to have like $750,000. But you can see, just to be clear, in these two numbers alone of the 208 and the 200,000 in commission, and then on top of that, the $100,000 to you, that's $508,000 just right there. So that's half. Okay, hopefully the expenses of the business aren't extreme, but they could be, we don't know. And ideally, this is where one of those perfect client traits comes in, where we try to look for businesses that have high profit margin. Because if they have, I'll give you a perfect example. We had a client recently, they were selling very high ticket products, but they net like 20%. So if they sold something for $100,000, they're netting $20,000. So right off the bat in their math, with a $100,000 sale, it doesn't mean anything, because once again, they have $20,000 that they're actually taking away from that. And that's to be clear, the cost of the product to them. So out of that $20,000, you then have to factor out, well, what was the cost per purchase? Was there any commission baked into there? And then all this other math, like the expenses of the business and the tax. So anyway, moral of the story, out of $1 million, okay, they're not getting $1 million. Like literally just in this specific set of stats right here, okay, they are in total like 50% is already gone, okay, and it might be less. Now, to be fair, yeah, if they're right now making $100,000 to $300,000 in a month and they end up making $1 million, they're still going to net far more money than what they are if they're only making $100,000 to $300,000. But I digress. My point being, that's an expectation, okay? Some people have an expectation of making $1 million a month, and they think, you might be sitting here watching this video right now thinking, oh, I would have thought they net a lot more than that. You might be thinking, oh, I'd expect somebody to net less. And that's what I try to say. That's an expectation. That's my point. So to be clear, with the financial model, we'll then add to it. Like, all right, yeah, so what are your expenses of the business right now? Let's work that in. What's the commission of the closers? Where do you live? Let's try to factor in your tax rate on this net money. And then that reiterates a really strong point, which is, okay, they might have agreed the first soft time where you just say, yeah, so here's how we charge. Like, we charge this base fee plus a rev share. And they're going to say, okay, yeah, great. Yeah, I agree to that. And you're going to set the expectation of like, look, like you think you're okay with it now, but when it really comes down to it, you're cutting us $100,000 a month wire. Are you really going to be comfortable with that? And they're going to be like, yeah. And you're going to say something along the lines of like, look, well, you're going to go to a mastermind one day and you're going to tell people like, yeah, dude, I've been crushing it. I'm making $1 million a month. I'm paying my marketer $1 million a month. And your friend's going to be like, what the fuck? How much you paying him? And you're going to listen to your friend. They're going to make you feel like insecure and bad about it. Are you still going to be comfortable cutting us that check? Like we'll go through all that kind of stuff. Okay. However, the financial model and you breaking down how much they're actually probable to net when they make $1 million, you have to revisit the pricing again. And you have to be like, yeah, so listen, out of that, you're adding essentially 10%. of what you're otherwise going to net paid to us instead. So just to revisit that, are you truly comfortable doing that? Yes. Okay, great. So to be clear, at that point, that is when these three things in particular, once they've all been reiterated and successfully agreed upon, essentially 2 different times, this is when we officially close the client. We start our onboarding process. And this is very important to understand, okay? What we do from here is only, and this is, once again, this is one of those rules of the game, okay? So back to the rules is we only do the things that produce the most revenue, okay? We will do nothing else, and we will do it in order, once again, of what has the highest probability to make the most money, and we will work our way down the list, okay? So as an example, if the first thing we could do would be to launch a new call funnel with an updated VSL, get the client to shoot some in-market direct response advertising, and in addition to that, we can run one of our mini content sequence advertising strategies, we're gonna do that, and that's all we're gonna do. If the client says some shit like, oh, well, we'd love to launch we've seen like MiniChat recently updated something in WhatsApp or Instagram, like we'd love to do that. If we determine, once again, as the rainmakers in the deal, that it is most probable to make them the most money to do that, then great, we'll do that. If it's not, we will tell them no. We do not listen to the client when they propose things to do that are not the most revenue-driven thing to do. We will only listen to clients when they tell us to do things that are the most revenue-driven thing to do. Otherwise, we are telling the client, hey, this is what we're gonna do. This is what we're gonna launch. Now, it's also important to note, we learned something also very simple in terms of the rules of the game. For us, we always work better when we get paid up front. Okay, so for us, my pricing today is $15,000 a month plus a 10% rev share. Okay, and it's very simple. When we charge this $15K a month, we work a lot harder up front, and it enables us to prioritize the deal, especially today. Today, like, we already have clients that pay us the amount that we want to get paid, okay? So it's hard to prioritize new deals that have a probability to get to that number when they're not going to pay us anything up front. So to be fair, as much as I'd like to only be able to charge a rev share, I think it reduced friction in the deal to get more deals and relationships started. It just doesn't work from an incentive-based perspective for us. We don't work at all on deals that aren't paying us yet, and we aren't able to prioritize them as a result of that. So it's unfair to the client to onboard them and then treat them as a very low priority. That 15K, it's a meaningful number to us. When you're looking at this and you're considering what you might charge, I would encourage you with that number specifically to just charge something that makes you feel like it's worth it. Okay, $15,000 to us is worth it. It's not too little money, but it's not too much money. It gets us in motion, makes us prioritize the relationship. It doesn't hurt if we have to refund and fire the client. That's important to note. However, it's meaningful enough where we don't want to just fire and refund the client and be like tyrants and just, if somebody's annoying or something's not as easy as we thought, we just fire them and refund them the money. We want it to be meaningful enough where we're not willing to do that. We want it to be not too much where we're not willing to fire them and walk away if we have to. And we also want it to be meaningful enough where we can prioritize the deal. Okay, so that's how you want to be thinking with what that number should be for you specific. Now, to be clear, in addition to that, it's very important to note skin in the game, okay? Clients need skin in the game. Without skin in the game, they are not going to prioritize what you're doing together. I assure you of that from personal experience, because we've tried just the rev share route and it just doesn't work for either party. The client, because they didn't have to pay any money for you, they're going to do shit so slow, dude. They're going to be little turtles on their end. They're not going to get you the logins you need fast enough. They're not going to be able to shoot ads fast enough. They're not going to do new VSLs fast enough. And why would they? Well, they haven't paid anything. There's no skin in the game on their end. They're just kicking back, waiting to make money and then kicking you off a rev share. They don't need to do things on their end fast. They might tell you to try to convince you, oh yeah, no, don't worry, dude. You don't need to charge me a fee. I'll do everything fast. That Jeremy guy's wrong. And you're going to learn the hard way. Skin in the game matters a lot, okay? Doesn't matter, once again, whether it's $15K or whatever you might want to charge in addition to the rev share, but them paying something will make them do the shit you need them to do a lot faster than if you don't, okay? Very important note. Now, anyway, this also, when it comes to our pricing, let me explain how this works. So we deduct the fee from what's paid on the rev share. So it's like they either only pay the fee or they either only pay the rev share. So let me explain how this works. If they are making at least $150,000 or more, then they only pay the difference in rev share. Because once again, let's use the example that they in total made $200,000, okay? They, in that example with 10%, would owe a total of $20,000. We take the fee, okay, and we deduct the fee. This is what's important to note. So we subtract the $15K that they already paid for us. So they would wire over the difference in that example of $5,000. So it's like to the client when they do this, yeah, they already paid us the $15K. Now they're also paying us $5. Well, that simply put, that just totals $20. It's like they only paid the rev share. And if they net $150K or less, then they're only paying the $15K fee. Because to be clear, $150K times 10% is $15,000 or less. So they don't pay any rev share when they make $150K or less. Okay, so that's what's important to note about this whole situation. Is it's framed like an either or thing, but regardless, like that $15K is going to get charged every month, and like I said, it's a recurring fee. It's ongoing 30-day basis getting charged. We will just deduct it from what's owed on the rev share. The rev shares, we always try to get paid between the 1st and the 5th of the following month. So that's when everything's calculated. In terms of how it's calculated, it's usually their bookkeeper or accountant working with our bookkeeper or our accountant. We have a bookkeeper that costs a couple $100 a month. So if they don't have a bookkeeper, which is very uncommon, then we'll just staff the bookkeeper for a couple $100 a month onto the account to quantify, once again, like what they actually made, what's trackable back to us. To be clear, we only do, when it comes to, once again, more rules of the game, it is only what is trackable back to us. Okay, we're not taking rev share off of everything. We're taking rev share off of what is trackable back to us. So it is only what is trackable back in our market. It is not off the entirety of their organization's revenue. It is, once again, our funnel, our ads, our marketing. That's it. That's all we're getting paid out on. We're not getting paid on what they're already making. We're just getting paid off the new revenue we're able to bring in. Now, it's important to note, some businesses work in a way where they'll charge rev shares, or they'll charge like payment plans, or they might not even have the legal ability to pay out rev shares, and that can sometimes complicate how you got to do deals. But it is very common that most of the cash is getting collected up front, and that's typically the revenue that we're going to have trackable back to us that we get paid out on. If a business is doing like some type of low ticket, like recurring service, or they're closing a significant amount of payment plans, even if it is a high ticket service, in those deals, we'll make sure to define they're paying us on an ongoing basis of that revenue that, once again, is trackable back to us, even if it's paid later. In some instances, I'd say about half the instances, where, once again, a majority of the cash is collected up front, and they might have a payment plan or two here and there. We'll keep it simple just for accounting purposes, so everything can be quantified between the 1st and the 5th with ease, and we'll just get paid off the front end cash collected, especially when a majority of their revenue is coming from that, based on what's trackable back to us. So anyway, moral of the story, rules of the game are very important, because, as I mentioned, without rules in a game, you're kind of just mindlessly playing, and you're doing random things, and you're charging random amounts, and nothing's really defined. And because nothing's defined, you don't go about it in a very particular, like, focused way. Okay, you don't have specific achievements that you're looking to accomplish. You, in most instances, are solely defining your game by revenue goals. And because you're only operating off revenue goals, like, you're not willing to expand and like really try. When I did this, when I tried to get paid, okay, keep in mind the original math here. When I tried to get paid $100,000 a month per deal, everything changed for us. Our potential changed, expanded exponentially. Our results that we generated for clients grew tremendously. Our speed and our efficiency and how fast we were able to accomplish these goals increased tremendously. Without exaggeration, I've had clients that we've gotten to $1 million a month within 60 to 90 days from how laser focused we are in a particular target. And once again, just operating within parameters of a defined game helped tremendously, once again, to the speed of accomplishments and achieving what it is that you're looking to achieve. Now, there are a few caveats that I want to make sure that I point out here, okay? Number one, well, not everybody's willing to pay. You're gonna have certain relationships where you get in to the point where they make the right amount, they meet a lot of the rules, they have the perfect client traits, but like, hey, they're just not willing to pay you that amount. We do not capitulate on those deals. There's very, very, very rare instances, but I will, once again, I'll be transparent and throw the caveat out there. We occasionally get somebody that is so well known, that is like in a niche that we just want to dominate and take over. And when we get that particular person an exceptional level of result, we want to turn that person, we want to pimp it out into a case study. Okay, so when we get a particular deal that we can just hard flex like crazy, we make sure the client knows. We tell them ahead of time, we're like, look, dude, if we're not gonna make $100,000 off this deal and you want us to just essentially charge you like a flat fee, first of all, we're not just gonna charge you $15K a month. We're gonna charge you a greater amount than that, maybe like 25 or 30K a month, and we're gonna make it worth it for ourselves, because we're gonna take this deal and we're gonna go out there and we're gonna talk about it until our face turns blue. We're gonna make content about it. We're gonna flex about it on our website. We're gonna talk about it on sales calls. We're gonna use it in our video pitches. That is the only time where we're probable to not charge a rev share. And this is not up for interpretation by the client. This is like, if once again, that type of client is in front of us on a sales call and they say like, I really like everything you guys are presenting here, I just don't want to do the rev share. We only, once again, will literally make that exception when we are the ones saying, well, you know what? Like, you're fucking massive and excessively well known. Like, you're a kingpin in this, or you're once again, you're top dog. You're the category king or queen. We'll make that exception, but you have to agree. Once again, we can hard flex like a motherfucker about this deal. You gotta agree, like, if I need to have somebody call you and have you say amazing things about what we've done together in this deal, you're gonna agree to do that, to be clear, if we're not making what we wanna make off this deal. And to be clear, in terms of a percentage, like saying, obviously a made up percentage, but it's so small. Like, total deals, since I've defined these specific rules, I'd say less than like 2 to 3% of our total deals have been like that. To be fair, and this is actually the cool part, they're not buying our silence when they pay us $100,000 a month by any means. I don't want to make it sound like that. We're still hard flexing about those deals too. However, there is an occasional deal, like we just closed one in this most recent month, where I won't say the name, of course, but I'll be able to share some information with you regardless. This particular guy, he had 40,000 registrants on a webinar that he did organically. He made $7 million off of this specific webinar that he did. And the guy absolutely crushes. He's a whale for sure inside of his space. He didn't want to pay a rev share, which I was, just kind of like, man, that sucks. I don't really want to do that deal when we can make so much off of a rev share. However, the guy said, like, listen, you can go out there and you can hard flex about the deal all you want after you're already making us money and after you're going out of your way and, just doing a great job on the deal. Like, I'll let you say whatever you want to say about it, as long as it's true, of course, and I'll back it up. I'll even make content about how much you guys helped me. However, it's all behind the scenes, like I'm not able to share as much about that particular deal because, simply put, first of all, it's a brand new deal. Second of all, the guy didn't really want us to talk about it much, and he was kind of in between. He was at first saying what I just articulated to you, where he was like, yeah, like I'm very open about it. You can go share everything you want, like go ahead. However, then he came back to us a few days later and he really thought about it. He was like, I don't think it'll look good for me to have that information out there, like it'll kind of create like doubt and skepticism about how I make all my money if people think that it's just coming from this. Like, I make a ton of money doing the thing that I'm helping them and trying to teach them and talk about. It's just gonna make me look bad if I have you go out there and share all that stuff. So to be clear, we were like, okay, great. Well then, yeah, we're gonna charge you a rev share. But he was like, I don't know, man. I really don't want to do the rev share. Like, that's an excessive amount of money that I'm gonna pay you guys if I make $7 million. Like, dude, I'm gonna have to pay you guys $700,000. That just, doesn't feel proportionally fair. So we told the guy, we were like, look, our goal in a deal is to get paid $100,000 a month. Yes, we occasionally have a deal that can pay us a little more than that when they make more than that. But since our goal is to make $100,000, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll do our normal $15K a month plus the 10% net rev share. However, what we're gonna do is we are going to cap our rev share at $100K a month. That way, if you make $7 million or whatever again, or hopefully more than that this time around, we'll just cap it at $100,000 for you. That way, we hit our goal, we're happy, and you sure, you're gonna make much more than that, and it might feel a little unfair, but regardless, like, it is what it is, we understand. And that guy was really happy with that specific deal structure. So occasionally, I say that specific story because occasionally, same thing, very, very rare, like less than 5% of total deals have like a situation where we have to do something like that. In other instances, like I remember we had this major personal brand, a guy in New York, he runs a real estate business, does like billions of dollars a year in transactions, and long story short, he was gonna come out with a specific product that he wanted our help selling. So when we started working with this guy, he was very adamant about the fact that he was obviously well known and he didn't want to pay a rev share, but he also didn't want us to talk about the deal. So what we did for him is we did a tiered pricing, okay? So this is where it gets kind of fun and where you can get pretty creative on how you go about your pricing structures. So instead of doing a rev share, what we did was incremental pricing, okay? So as an example, our fee, once again, of $15,000 a month is what we would charge up to a certain amount of revenue. And then we would bump it to $30,000. And then we would bump it to $45,000. And then we would bump it to $60,000. And that was as high as we went in this particular deal. Long story short though, is we did it based on the revenue that the guy was probable to produce. So the first one was like a $200,000 milestone. The second one, I think we did increments of $200,000. So the next one would have been $400,000. The next one would have been 600,000, the next one would have been 800,000. And sure, this is technically a little less than what we otherwise would have gotten paid if we just did our normal rev share, but the guy agreed to it. He was like, yeah, I mean, that's agreeable, the tiered pricing makes sense. So in our head, it was still a rev share, just a little different. So occasionally you'll have to do deals like that. So if somebody has any kind of resistance, simply put, to the pricing, but they meet all your other criteria, really 3 scenarios. Number 1, tiered pricing, like what I just articulated. Number 2, tell them you are gonna flex the shit out of that deal in the instance that they don't let you do it, but they have to be extremely well known in your niche. Like literally the top dog who everybody else within that niche knows about. If you get onto a call or they see that you worked with that specific person, they'll say, oh yeah, I know them. That's badass. You were doing that? Like, oh, I'd love to work with you. That's the only time where we'll capitulate on that. Or 3, you just gotta be willing to walk away. Those are really the 3 scenarios, okay? So anyway, long story short, I say all of this to let you know that this model has changed my life tremendously. It improved my quality of life exponentially. There's a lot of benefits that I did not foresee at the time that I made this drastic decision to change my entire business around this specific pricing plan and this specific set of rules to the game, okay? And it helped me so much. Main thing, once again, being quality of life, staff count went down tremendously, fully remote. I work with the best possible people in every niche that we operate in. We make a ton of money per deal. So I have a lot more cash now in comparison to what I had previously. I'm able to invest far more money. I'm able to just spend time with my loved ones, my family, my friends. I'm just able to do stuff again. In comparison to the way I was doing it previously, like I just had a really low quality of life when I was trying to do like the build it to sell model. And I make far more cash than what I ever would have made in the instance that I would have sold even for a large lump sum. You know what I mean? So it's played out tremendously well to go with this rev share model and just maximize the amount of cash that comes in every month rather than trying to build up a business that has a certain amount of EBITDA and nets a certain amount, trying to then get a lump sum on the exit. Because after taxes on that lump sum, it's important to note, like it's just not nearly as much in comparison to what we make on an ongoing basis having the rev share model. Now, I will give you a few pro tips here, okay? And these pro tips relate specifically to, okay, you're officially in the deal, okay? You've got yourself a rev share lined up. You've got yourself the right type of client. Like, you're even starting to get paid. Like instead of your normal rate, like you're starting to see the amount you're making per deal go up a lot, okay? Like you're in the tens of thousands now, or maybe thank the Lord you got to 100K a month too, okay? And you're starting to wonder, like, oh my God, like what are the risks here? You're starting to feel a little anxious about some of the things that are gonna come up. So let me help you specifically with those issues that you're potentially gonna come across like I have over the years, so you can work around them and be aware of them if and when they come up. Okay, so number 1, and this one, honestly, in my opinion, sucks the worst. This is the most interesting one that I've come across over the years. And it seems good, but it's actually terrible. So client's business gets purchased, okay? So in terms of risks, let me make sure I write these down for you guys so you guys have them all too. So risks, okay? Client sells the business. So you're gonna make people so much money that they're gonna have people approach them to buy them out. So this for me has happened 3 times, okay? And each time it's been a private equity business that approaches these individuals to become bought out. And they're completely different businesses for the 3 different specific business types that have been purchased, which is very interesting as well. Now, this seems good, okay? But based on our agreements that we had defined, we're only paid that fee plus rev share. We don't have any equity in these people's businesses. So if and when they get bought out, we're their biggest expense by far in comparison to what the private equity business or whoever would buy them out, if it is ever different, would want to see. Every single time in these 3 instances that a private equity company comes in and buys these people out, a private equity business is actually really interesting from my perspective now that I've seen it up close 3 times. They're essentially just marketing agencies with a bunch of cash. And instead of going out there and like selling businesses on working with them and the business paying them, they just buy the person's business and they just run it themselves. And they usually have like their own internal sales, marketing, and operations teams. And they generally just think, I'm smarter than the person operating that business and I know what to do better than them and I see bigger potential in the business than what they've actualized. So I'm gonna take that business from them and I'm gonna fucking grow the shit out of it. Now, interestingly enough, in the 3 different instances where these people have been purchased, it has actually not worked out that way at all. The private equity businesses have actually done that and then ran it straight into the ground. 2 out of 3 of those instances, the client has to call me years later, like a year to 3 years later for these two instances. And they have to rehire me when they're in a much worse place. Like, I'll give you a direct example. One client was at 1.7 million a month when they sold. I get fired right away. And then to be clear, that private equity business ran the business from 1.7 mil a month to $40,000 a month, dude. $40,000 a month. They just shut the business down, gave the equity back to the person they bought it from, and just walked away. Client calls me back up when he's at $40,000 a month and is like, hey, I need to rehire you again. And I'm like, dude, like you're not even close into the position of like somebody we would work with now. Not just out of ego, but like literally you're making $40,000 a month. You don't have enough for our fee and ad spend. You know what I mean? Like you're toast. The other instance, which was also really interesting, but not as drastic, was that particular client was around $2 million a month. Same exact scenario. Private equity business comes in, jacks the cost per call up like 500%. It's insane. Business operations just go to shit. Client who got bought out was still in the business. He was forced to be in the business. He wasn't having as much fun. So he wasn't doing as much. He wasn't as productive. Business just wasn't making as much money. It didn't go down as bad. It got to around a couple $100,000 a month. I think in that particular instance, it went from 2 million to around like 3 to 700,000, give or take the month. Client thankfully called me back around that time frame. It was the same situation. Private equity company just gave that guy back his equity. We're walking away, wrote it off as a loss. And I don't know if it was just like a tax harvesting strategy or what for them, for why they're so comfortable walking away after buying these people out for as much as they do. But regardless, client gets bought out, is able to get their equity back. They call me back up. They need to scale back up. We were able to help that one a lot, believe it or not. That guy actually still works with us today in a consulting capacity. But here's the point I'm trying to make, okay? The client getting bought out when you don't have equity, that's a risk, okay? It's a big risk. So what we do now, we call it provisional equity, okay? So we don't take equity from these clients. That adds a tremendous amount of friction to the deal. We just simply add a caveat to every deal we do in our agreements that says, hey, if and when you get bought out and we've contributed more than this dollar amount trackable back to us, then you give us 10% provisional equity, which means at the time of exit, if trackable back to us, there's been more than this amount of revenue, okay? Then when you get bought out, you have to give us 10% of equity. And to be clear, we word it in a way so we don't get fucked. We word it in a way where it's not at the time of the exit, like the literal transaction. It's if somebody comes in and they start shopping an exit and they start taking it seriously and there's like a certain amount of progression that occurs in that deal buying cycle, we're immediately granted 10%. That way, once again, we don't get fucked. And same thing, client generally always agrees that that's very fair. However, 3 different times I've had these fucking unicorn deals where we're getting paid 6 figures a month and I get rug pulled on them because the client gets bought out and I had no provisional equity clause. I had no equity. I just all of a sudden am their biggest expense and they have to cut me, okay? And it's not them, it's the fucking private equity business. Okay, number 2, and this one's really interesting as well. This is a friend slash mastermind, okay? So typically you're already deep in the deal here, okay? You're getting paid whatever you're getting paid, a lot of money, hopefully once again, 100K plus a month off the deal. They talk to some friend that they have who's like, you know, making a little bit of more than them or like making a little bit less than them. And you know, this is a person that they've like had a long-term relationship with and they're talking to the person and they say like, you know, they're just kind of digging into each other's businesses. And like, it just kind of comes out like, oh yeah, I'm paying this guy X amount of dollars a month. And the friend's like, what? You know, like, are you fucking insane? Like, how much are you paying the guy? And to be clear, you know, once again, your guy or your girl that you're working with, they've never been put in this situation before. They've never paid somebody $100,000 a month. Up to this point, they've never viewed it as unfair because you're making them a ton of money if they're paying you what you're getting paid in the rev share. And once again, expectations aside, them agreeing to it, all the financial modeling stuff I've talked about, you could be months and months and months, years into the deal. And all of a sudden, one of these friends or some dickhead at a mastermind just tells them, oh yeah, dude, like you're a dumbass, you know, like why are you paying that person that much? You could pay 10 people $10K a month for $100,000 a month. Like, what are you doing? And it's just gonna seed doubt. There's actually a CIA document that talks about how to sabotage an organization. And one of the key points is to seed doubt and uncertainty. That's all you gotta do. You don't have to spread it like wildfire. You just have to seed the thought of doubt and uncertainty. And what happens is it just grows and festers through time, and it doesn't matter how much time passes. Could be a couple weeks, could be a couple months. Eventually it comes out and it's like, I just don't feel good about paying you anymore this amount. And it's like, as an example, maybe you took them from $100,000 a month to $1 million or $2 million a month. And you did that for like a year or two, and you couldn't really progress past whatever amount you got them up to. They're gonna come to you and they're gonna be like, look, we're just not really growing that much anymore. Everything became normal to them. That's essentially what happens. And because you're still not growing it as much, they think that because this is normal now, that if they remove you, things are gonna stay normal. And that's not true. It's the farthest thing from the truth, obviously. But they don't know that because things have become normalized to them in how much money you've made them. And because it hasn't grown tremendously, they start to think, I can remove this guy or I can remove this girl and nothing bad's gonna happen. So they'll try. They're gonna just fire you, okay? And you're probably thinking like, well, I can put something into my agreement that prevents that, or I can just take equity in the business and that prevents that. And sure, you're acting like you're talking to a guy that's not teaching you how to do this. Like, I've tried all that stuff. There's gonna be a way, regardless of however you word it or regardless of whatever you do, for them to be able to fuck you. I assure you of that. If they want you out, they're gonna find a way to get you out, okay? You'd be amazed of how much people can finesse their way out of shit like this. So anyway, regardless, they'll find a way out. And it usually starts once again with a friend or the mastermind, okay? Now, my point being, they are then gonna lose a fuckload of money because obviously it's not the way that they thought it was. They can't pull you out when you're a key player and have shit just continue to work the way that it was. That's just not how it goes. So to be clear, when and if they do that, they're then gonna contract substantially, okay? And this is a very key point here. You have to open the line of communication, okay, if they do that. So if they end up firing you and then you see like an extreme contraction in the amount of money that they're making, don't let their ego hold them back, okay? Don't let the ego prevent money is another simple way to say that, okay? You need to reach out, you need to be like, hey man, like, how's everything going? Just checking in. And you need to just open the line of communication and let them be like, yeah, like things aren't going as well. And it's like, oh, well, do you want me to come in and take a look and like see what's going on? Like maybe there's an opportunity for us to re-engage. And to be clear, that's an opportunity for you to get back into the deal. Now, I've seen that both in myself, and I've also seen that in my higher level inner circle students that I teach how to do this, where they've been in that exact situation, they get booted from the deal, the client loses a fuckload of money, and then they have an opportunity to re-engage, but there can't be any ego involved. That's a key part. Like, client will have ego, you can't have any ego. You gotta reapproach it and just, once again, close the deal. So long story short, these are usually opportunities, especially, now there's two situations here. If you reach out, you charge whatever you charged before. If they reach out, you charge the asshole tax, okay? The asshole tax being you charge more than what you were previously charging, and you have all the leverage. They have to do it, especially if they reached out to you. They know they fucked up. If you have to reach out to them, just once again, try to re-engage the way that it was prior and be willing to walk if not, because like I said, you still have all the leverage because you know what to do to get the business back up and they don't, and they now learned that the hard way. Okay, client sells the business, the friend or the mastermind thing, these are all devious risks, believe it or not, to this entire thing working or just catastrophically failing underneath you. In addition to that, and this one's pretty interesting. Along the same lines of what I was just talking about, but someone else can do it cheaper, has the same authority as you. And this is pretty interesting as a point, okay? So you, as a business and as an agency, to get these kind of deals in the first place, I assure you, okay? You got some swagger. You got a rap sheet of deals, okay? You're doing things the right way. You are known in whatever you're doing in order to get these kind of deals coming your way, okay? And when you start getting paid this amount, it's gonna be obvious. Like, people hire me, I think it's hilarious. Like, not to sound pretentious here when I say this, but like, dude, I live in a mansion, okay? I have 2 homes in the same city. I have cars that are sometimes better than my clients' cars, okay? And I have a lot of them. I don't have a little of them, I have a lot of them. I have a better like watch collection than some of my clients do, especially when they first start working with me. In most instances, especially when they're only making 100 to 300K a month, I'm making more money than my clients when they first start with us, okay? And then eventually, it's important to note, they obviously will exceed me, hopefully, in the amount of money that they eventually make, and that's great. We want that to occur. But we come into the deal like, dude, we got authority, okay? We got authority in what we do. When we come into a niche and we want to work with an individual, we look good. We look the part, and we are exceptional as an organization, through and through. And how we look as individuals, how my staff looks as individuals, how we operate as individuals, we are pros, okay? And we got the authority to back it. Now, to be clear, there's occasionally a person that comes in that has a similar level of authority that will be able to do it for cheaper. Like, maybe they've done a few other deals that are at or similar to the caliber of which you've done. Maybe they've gotten a few clients to the same level of what revenue you've been able to produce for different clients. And they somehow meet your client or pitch your client and just get into communication with your client, and they think, yeah, hey, I'll do like an audit or something like that. That's usually how it starts. And they're gonna simply say like, oh, we can do all this stuff that's happening for you, because you're not doing like, rocket science in these people's ad accounts or anything. Like, you know what you're doing better than other people do. And these aren't overly simplified things that you're executing, for sure. Sometimes, to be fair, there are advanced strategies that are being executed, but it's not advanced shit. You just know what buttons to press and when, and how to operate better than almost everybody else. That's why you're able to make more than everybody else as an agency. But however, there are obviously other people that are going to come in occasionally that are as good as you or right below your level, and they're going to be able to do it a little cheaper. Now, when and if that happens, okay, there's gonna be a similar situation to what I just talked about. The client that you're working with says, oh, you're telling me I could save like, fucking $70,000 a month, like literally almost $1 million a year. Sure, I'll take that bet, like give it a shot. And typically it's gonna start by not pulling you off completely. It's gonna start by like them operating in some fucking stealth ad account or something. And simply put, the client is going to attempt to replace you, okay? And you got to kind of look out for signs like that, like an agency gets added into the account, or like a person randomly gets added into the account, or like, clients asking, can you write down like the shit you're doing in a day, or like the SOPs, or whatever. There's going to be some signs that pop up that somebody, okay, with a similar level of authority as you is coming in and about to try to replace you, okay? Because obviously, to be fair, there's a huge financial incentive, as you know, the person getting paid a lot of money, okay? So long story short, when and if that happens, believe it or not, the best route is to call it out, okay? This matters a lot. You just have to go to the client, you have to be like, look, man, I don't know what you're thinking here, but you're risking a lot. I just want to put that into perspective, okay? If you take that route and it fails, when and if you have to come back to us, I'm going to charge you more money than what you're getting paid, what you're paying us right now. I'm going to charge you more, just so you know. And to be clear, I'm also a little shaky right now in the fact that you did this. It makes me want to clam up, it makes me want to pull back. And I don't think you really want us pulling back and prioritizing other deals. I mean, to be fair, one thing that we tell clients, and this is very important to understand, we literally will do this. We will just go and pitch every single competitor that they have. And we'll let them know, like, this is what we're doing for this particular deal. We want to line up some sales calls. And we'll tell the client that. We'll be like, look, dude, we're going to go out there and we're going to create some leverage for ourselves right now because you chose to do this. We're going to go pitch everybody else. We're going to line up sales calls. We're going to have this deal replaced by the end of the month. So you got two options, okay? And I'm not trying to strong arm you into anything. I'm trying to be transparent with you. If you want to try to replace us, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go try to replace you. And if that's the game you want to play, that's what your actions specifically just inspired us to go do. So if you want to do that, great. If you want us to not do that, then don't snake this fucking revenue out from underneath us and try to do this thing that you're doing. Like, what's going on? Why are you even considering this? We have a good thing going, and have the hard conversation. We've had to do that, I don't know, at least like 5 or 6 times over the years. And out of those 5 or 6 times, I think at least twice, we've actually like pulled out of the deal and then gone and just worked with their competitors. And believe it or not, those 2 different instances, we've made more money off of those other 2 deals than we would have in the original deal that we had to pull out of. And the original deal naturally loses money. And I don't say that out of ego to just make it sound like we're the greatest agency on planet Earth. I'm sure there's somebody out there, or at least a bunch of people out there that are making as much or more money than us on relationships with clients, okay? Not trying to sound like the greatest person on earth here or sound pretentious or like a dick, but I am saying in almost all instances where people do one of these risks, okay, and they try to pull out of the deal for some reason, then they end up losing money because we were the ones who got the business from a much lower level to that point. It is, believe it or not, harder than it looks to just be able to maintain that amount of revenue without knowing what got it there in the first place, because you start the iteration cycle again and you have to relearn on your own all the stuff that we learned the hard way about what worked and what didn't work. And that is once again worth what you're going to pay us per month to not have to relearn that the hard way and deal with an excessive level of contraction. Because as an example, if you try to save $100,000 a month and your business ends up losing $200,000 a month, which is a small contraction, by the way, usually it's much worse than that. Like, dude, you didn't save $100,000 a month, you lost several $100,000 a month trying to save $100,000 a month. So we call that stuff out. Simply put, we're just very transparent about the whole thing. Now, to be clear, there are a ton of other lessons to this whole thing. However, this has been a very long video, and you got shit to do and I got shit to do. So to be clear, you want more advanced lessons like this? Good news, you're gonna have to pay the boy, okay? I have an inner circle program, $2,000 a month. I teach the highest level lessons inside of that specific group. You get one-on-one time with me twice a month, weekly group calls, a group chat with a bunch of other ballers. Average person in there does 100 to 300K a month. The lowest students in there do like 20 to 50K a month. We have several people in there doing a couple $1 million a month. We do masterminds 4 times a year. Believe it or not, we got one coming up this weekend. We do it at the top of every quarter. So typically January, April, July, and October. We do it right here at my house in Miami. So anyway, moral of the story, you want lessons like this. I'm sure you can recognize that obviously the value you get out of learning these things and applying them far exceed the $2,000 a month that you're gonna pay me to be a part of a program like that. But to be clear, that's what it takes, okay? That's what it takes. This is the depth in which I'll go on a free YouTube video like this, and still, this is very helpful to you, and I'm sure you'll get a lot of value out of it either way. Link for that is in the description if you're interested. I'd appreciate it if you liked, commented on the video. If you have any further questions or topics, I'm always happy to share and give you guys some more information. And I look forward to helping you get to the point where you too can have $1 million months and start the process of balling. All right, bye, talk soon.